Have you ever noticed that pigs are essentially biological plows operated by a powerful, muscular neck and body? In fact, you can use them to help prepare the soil for your gardens or your cover crops, and indeed, sometimes you can use them to help plant those gardens and cover crops, but sometimes it can be disastrous as well. I'm Rob from Dowdle Family Farms, and I'm always looking for ways to put our livestock, especially our pigs, to work. In fact, one of the ways we do that is we've been using pigs in this forest paddock now for over 2 years to help open up this forest and to reduce a lot of the briars and the brambles. One of the problems that people have with pastured pigs is that they're always rooting up our pastures, they're always rooting up our soils and that kind of thing. And while that's true in many occasions, the thing is that we can put that very characteristic of pigs to work and reduce some of our time, energy, and labor. It's not uncommon for me to take a cover crop field that we've grazed with cattle, it's regrown, and to use the pigs at the end of the summer to tear that pasture up, to eat the cover crop, and then to help plant the next cover crop. Sometimes it can work really well, but sometimes it does not work very well as well. Let me take you over to an area where it did not work at all. In January of this year, I moved the pigs off of this paddock. I'd had 30 pigs in here, and what I did is I overseeded this paddock with a combination of different cool season crops a day before I moved them off, and then I moved them to the next paddock over there. And what ended up happening is the seeds germinated, but I did not get very good germination or growth out of them, not because the weather conditions were bad, but just because they did not do a very good job of planting those seeds with the pigs. Now, it was not that big of a deal because I was just trying to get some ground cover and hopefully some ground cover that I could graze later. What did end up happening is I had some Austrian winter peas that sprouted in the different piles of hay, but that's where I got most of the coverage. On the bare ground, I had a few Austrian winter peas, a little bit of dwarf Essex rape, and a little bit of ryegrass, but it all did not germinate very well, and it was not a very good, successful cover crop planting. So what I've done right now, it's June 7th or 8th, and what I've done is yesterday I went on and disked this field up because I'm planting it for our warm season cover crop mix. Our warm season cover crop mixes do such a great job of improving the soil health, and the soil in this pasture is so poor that I really need good germination rates, and I need a good stand of this diverse cover crop mix to help improve the soil. So in order to have a much more successful cover crop, let's take a look at some of the 3 things that we can do to make sure it works out better. First and foremost, you can always use pigs to break up sod, to till the soil, and to prepare the soil for cover cropping. You may need to do more work with a disc or a tiller or a no-till drill, but you can use pigs to help prepare the soil, to take down a lot of the forage that's already there, and pigs will do a fairly decent job of that just by the nature of how they work. But in determining if you should actually use the pigs to plant the cover crop, there are a few questions that you should ask. First and foremost, how critical is it that you get a good stand of the crop that you're planting? If all you're trying to do is overseed a pig paddock where the pigs have been, they've destroyed the vegetation, and you want it to grow back a little bit faster than it normally would, or if you want the vegetation to grow back to be a more productive type of vegetation, but if it doesn't work and it's okay, that's fine. You can use pigs to plant that kind of cover crop like that. However, if you need those crops to be much more successful and to get a solid, even stand, you may not want to use pigs. The third thing you may want to consider is how much is the seed that you're planting going to cost you. Some seeds are very cheap to plant per acre, and some of them are much more expensive. If you're using much more expensive varieties of some cover crops, then you may want to consider doing something else. Some seeds are very cheap to plant, like dwarf Essex rape. The seed costs $1 a pound, and you put it out at about a rate of 2 to 5 pounds per acre. So at 5 pounds per acre, you're not out a whole lot if you don't get a very good stand of it. However, if you're planting something that costs a lot more to plant per acre, say $50, $60, $70 per acre, then you may want to consider actually getting a better stand of it by disking it, no-till drilling it, or tilling the seed into the soil so that you get a better stand out of it and you don't waste that expensive seed. The fourth question that you may want to ask is, what kind of weather are you expecting? If you're planting it in wet weather, or if you're expecting rain in the future, the seed can germinate on top of the ground, especially if it's a smaller seed or with just a little bit of coverage. However, if you have dry weather in the future and you have a little bit of soil moisture, covering that seed with soil will help it absorb more moisture so that it can germinate. So the weather that's involved is also important. If you decide to plant with pigs, there are a few things that you can do that'll help it be much more successful. First and foremost, plant at 2 to 3 times the normal rate that you normally would plant. The reason for that is pigs will eat a lot of that seed. Also, don't use treated seed. Second, you want to have a lot more pigs on a smaller area of land for a shorter amount of time. In this acre or so paddock, I put about 35 pigs on here for about a month, and they tore through most of the vegetation. But what I should have done is I should have put those 30 pigs on about a fourth or a fifth of an acre for 5 to 7 days at a time, and then moved them much more quickly, and they would have had a lot more impact. More animals for a shorter amount of time disturbs the soil more rather than just compacting it. A third tip that you can do is use mostly small seeded cover crops. Things like brassicas, ryegrass, and other things germinate more quickly and more readily if they're on bare ground. They can absorb moisture when it rains. Larger seeded cover crops normally are planted deeper so that they can absorb more soil moisture, and they don't germinate as well if they're planted just on top of the ground. The next thing you want to do is, if you're planting with the pigs, put them in the paddock and then move them within 5 to 24 hours, depending on how many pigs you have and what size of an acreage. Here I left the pigs for 24 hours, and what I really should have done is I should have moved them a good bit sooner. Again, if I had had smaller paddocks with that number of pigs, I could have moved them sooner, and I would have planted the seed out and moved them after about 5 hours. Finally, and probably the most important, is using pigs to plant cover crops works much more effectively if you've planting on ground that has had cover crops previously. Where I've been the most successful is when I've had a sorghum sudan grass mix that I've grazed with cows. It's reaching the end of the summer and it's time to plant something else. I put the pigs on that diverse cover crop. They wind up eating a lot of the sorghum sudan grass. They eat a lot of the other stuff in there. And then a lot of it just lays down on the ground. When I broadcast seeds, especially purple top turnips on one area over here, what happens is there's enough shade, there's enough soil moisture if it rains, both from the dirt and from the cover crops on the field, that helps those seeds retain more moisture, be shaded from the sun, and germinate more effectively. One of the problems that I had with this and not having good germination rates is this is really hard clay soil. It's very underperforming. It's never had any cover crops, and it had underperforming forages on it when I put the pigs on it to begin with. And because of that, there wasn't just a whole lot of good soil structure to help support those seeds on top of the soil when I planted them like that. You can use pigs to help prepare the soil for your garden or your cover crops, and you can even use pigs under certain conditions to help plant those cover crops and maybe those garden crops as well. However, if you'll put them out on your pasture, it'll give the pigs something to do, it'll help prepare the soil, it'll scatter the manure, and it'll help prepare the ground for when you do plant your cover crops. At the very least, it entertains your pigs, it fights boredom, and you'll get some benefit out of it as well. Until next time, take care and have a great day.